Gentlemen, may I request you to be seated? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The theme for this session is Advancements in Drone Technologies and Campaign Strategy. To chair this session, we have Air Marshal SP Dharkar, PVSM, UYSM, AVSM, Vice Chief of Air Staff. May I request the Air Marshal to please come to the stage. Thank you, sir. To co-chair this session, we have Lieutenant General Ajay Kumar, VSM, DG Infantry. May I request the General to please come to the stage. Thank you, sir. To begin this insightful discussion, I now invite our esteemed speakers to join us on stage. Air Vice Marshal Rajiva Ranjan, VM retired. Mr. Sarjan Shah for JSW UAV. Brigadier Anshuman Narang, retired. Let me introduce the chairs and the panelists. Air Marshal SP Dharkar, PVSM, UYSM, AVSM, took over as Vice Chief of the Air Staff at Air Headquarters after relinquishing appointment as the Air Officer Commanding-in-Chief of Eastern Air Command. Earlier, he was the Senior Air Staff Officer at Headquarters SWAC, DG Defence Space Agency at Bangalore, Air Defence Commander at Headquarters Eastern Air Command, and Assistant Chief of the Air Staff Training at Air Headquarters. Lieutenant General Ajay Kumar, VSM, Director General Infantry, was commissioned into the 16th Battalion of the Punjab Regiment in 1990. He later commanded 9 Punjab. He is an alumnus of DSSE, Army War College, and NDC. He has held key instructional, staff and diplomatic appointments, including Defense Attaché to Saudi Arabia and leadership roles at Headquarters NCC and Headquarters IDS. For his distinguished service, he has been awarded the Vishesh Seva Medal. Air Vice Marshal Rajiva Ranjan, VM retired, was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in June 1987. A fighter combat leader and qualified flying instructor, he has amassed 3,850 accident-free flying hours across 15 fighter and trainer aircrafts. He also served as Air Attaché at the Indian Embassy in Kabul. For his outstanding service, he has been awarded the Vayu Sena Medal and the Chief of Air Staff Commendation twice. Mr. Sarjan Shah, Jindal Steelworks UAV, founded Ikigai Capital to advance India's defense, aerospace, and AI partnerships. He led the India market entry for Shield AI, a US defense technology business. He now serves on the board of Jindal Steelworks UAV following its strategic partnership with Shield AI. Brigadier Anshuman Narang, retired, is an alumnus of RIMC, NDA, and DSSE. He currently holds the Adani Defense Chair of Excellence on Counter-UAS at CENJOWS and is the founder of the think tank Atmanirbhar Soch, which runs courses on PLA, future warfare, and multi-domain operations. A keen China watcher and author of 3 books, he is also an advisor at Sohora Technologies. I once again welcome the esteemed panelists on stage. Speakers are kindly requested to adhere to their allotted time. A buzzer will sound 2 minutes before the time limit as a cue to conclude. I now hand over to the chairperson.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to be here to talk about something that affects us all today, and is something that shows up in the news the moment you either put on a television set or pick up a newspaper. If Moore's law changed computing a few years ago and talked about what pace of change there could be in that domain, I think somebody needs to put forth a law over here with an easily shrunk half timeline. Because what changes in this domain almost brings in new technologies at a pace unprecedented. And seeing new stuff on the anvil in just about 2 to 3 months' time is more the norm rather than simply being common. And if that be the case, unless those of us here in uniform and those from industry, as well as those who watch these spaces keenly, can come to terms with what happens, the pace at which it happens, and what it brings with it, I guess it will be a difficult proposition for military planners and those who are involved with national security to really look at this with any hope of being upfront about it in due course of time. Under those circumstances then, something like this and the discussion that we intend to have today, which is about advancement in drone technologies and how it would affect campaign strategy with some kind of strategic outlook as to how to counter such systems, I think we would do well to listen to the speakers that are here with me on the podium today to find out how best we can address some of these challenges. And if that be the case, then I think without taking much more of somebody's time space, because he has a 2-minute warning from the buzzer, may I request Marshal Rajiva Ranjan to please take the podium and tell us about what he has for us.
Gentlemen and ladies, I'm here in the firing line on 2 accounts. One is we are talking of unmanned. Having been air and supporting the air for last 40 years, one would get threatened because there are large number of guys who talk. There's no more use for pilots, and especially the fighter ones. To some account, I would agree, but not in this time frame. Maybe when you achieved technical singularity, then you can talk of that man being replaced with the machine altogether. Second is, I'm only going to talk on the drones, while the others would generally talk on the strategy and also counter-drone. Okay, all of you are very familiar, so I'll skip a few of the slides. Essentially, the drones you can utilize for all the kind of role you can imagine. And the time frame in the recent time, from 2019 onward, they have been in forefront in the media and the battlefield. From Armenian war to Syrian to the Libya to now Ukraine-Russia war and the Middle East. And the one other major thing has happened is the distances between the warring guys has increased from 500 meter to a kilometer. For the land battle, it has increased to 25 kilometer. Similar thing is happening in the aerial and the maritime domain. The strategic landscape, when you examine the ongoing battles and the war which is happening in the Eastern Europe and the Middle East, you have certain lessons to learn on the front of technology. Thereafter, you have the doctrine and the policy aspects which are flashed. Operationally, one has to adjust to the emerging this technology, quickly adopt so that you are effective. The second thing is being cost effective. The drones have to be mass produced, wherein you need to master the core technology, what USAF is trying to do for the replicator concept and counter drone under replicator 2. Similarly, you need to adopt COTS item because in the war, there'll be no mill grid. The whatever you can assemble quickly and throw at the enemy, that will win you war. Thereafter, we need to develop the very, cost-effective in manner that you can do a mass number. If Chinese do a Galwan incident, I would put 500 drones in the air, underground, over the surface, close to South China Sea, across, from Andaman Nicobar, and say, hey, hold on. Next is your non-state actors would also be having this, so that everybody would like to have an air power to themselves. One of the most important things, we need to train everyone to do yourself kind of a thing, understand to operate the drone, because it will be as common as operating rifles tomorrow. Countermeasure, various kinetic, non-kinetic, and high energy would be the norms, and you need to have also airborne system wherein you do this kind of a job. Some of the drones used in the Ukraine I have listed, and from this, all this background, what are some of those, around 20, 25 of them have listed some of the lessons for India. Is robotic warfare is going to be there. Till now it will become more prominent. You need to mass adaptation you will have to have, wherein if they are trying to push some agenda, you put the number very high to indicate that you are combat ready. Then you have to transform your military structure so that you can operate very quickly and in this kind of environment, and also use the drones effectively, maybe form unmanned system force. Then you need to have a detection grid and also the counter drone, because that would become norm for the future battle. C2 and cyber would be, and network would be integral part of the drone ecosystem, because the information which you are getting, you need to pass to the last man. So therefore, the cyber security would be very prominent. AI-enabled drone warfare, the more you have the on-edge computing and also smarter drones and intelligent drone, better you would be off tomorrow. Maritime and the land-centric, also drones are coming in a big manner. You have increased engagement distance, as I covered. As a result of that, you would have beyond line of sight fights. You'll fight in the smaller units, and you need to have a very strong counter-drone system. Longer vectors and battlefield awareness would be from the leader to the down to the everyman, a very common thing. Psychological effect would be there if you bring the drones. So if the rain starts, everyone would start looking for umbrella. So therefore, counter-drone system, everybody will demand. So you need to think of creating rain through the drones. Somebody says death of the larger drones. Of course, to some extent, because you need air defense umbrella to protect him. Otherwise, he's no-go. You need to have stealth fighter drones along with your own fighters or the man platform. So therefore, 14 plus 8, I have written 14 man, 8 unmanned in a unit kind of a system can be thought of. Next is for protected war, the only way you can bring the ammunition on the battlefield easiest is by having the drones. The Chinese generals visited all non-conventional, non-military industry to map. I asked, what is the Nilkamal going to do in the drone? Obviously, the drone structure would be made by Nilkamal other than the water tanks in the chair. Commercial quadcopter would be a common, and of course, I said non-traditional defense sector would be prominent for the war fighting. So a strategic partnership in terms of domestic and international to accelerate your innovation and the production cycle. And of course, the procurement, you need to think differently than what you're doing. Some concept is called as blue unmanned system. US and USAF has evolved, wherein they say these are the drones which have been completely made by domestic ecosystem. There is no foreign, those 5 countries which they name as a rogue. And as a result, they have labeled there. Every 6 months, they come with a new list. And from this list, the units can buy very freely without IFA stopping them. So those kind of little concepts you need to evolve. Investment in the long-term plan we have to do. Layer defense, the multiple drone system has to be there. Thereafter, sometime you can create blockade and denial through drones, and you need to integrate into the conventional. Self-reliance, I don't have to talk much because everyone is aware. We have to have a tailored approach, as CDS said in the morning, that we need to evolve our own concept and the terminologies, definition, etc. Decisive role in assisting secondary move. If the adversaries are always taking advantage against India, they are first mover. With the second mover advantage, that is ISR, quick mobility and combat support. Even with the 50% of the forces, you can checkmate, and every time you checkmate, you announce, and then you have the victory of the global front. You need a diverse mix of the drones. EW and counter drone has to be there. Some of the drone system, unmanned and MUMT system, what we need to look at is listed. Broad list is there. What are the future directions? AI and edge computing and the drone will take you to the next level. You need to have a simulation environment to train your people in the realistic, in the rooms, etc., or in the closed space, so that effectively he can handle any kind of a drone scenario. Also, simulation-based R&D and production will help you to accelerate your manufacturing. Currently, 12 to 15 weeks is the technology cycle in the Ukrainian battlefield. Innovative indigenous system, we need to focus. One thing I want to highlight is everybody is demanding industry PLI. Please have a look at Section 35 of Income Tax Act, which promotes the R&D. So incentive 200% till 2017, now down to 100%. Can you ask for 500% for 5 years and say, these are the technology I need to develop in India, so give me this kind of thing? Surely the government will look at favorably. Testing and certification process, they need to be made free. There has to be collaboration with various entities. Do we have any joint paper in terms of user, industry, and academia researcher? None from India. Obviously, you will not match up with the other guys. Thereafter, you need to showcase your own product. Ask the DAs abroad to register your products so that industry gets business. If they have a business, there will be money and innovation. Thereafter, you need to have conduct international seminar. We need to be prepared for future warfare by adopting, skilling, and most importantly, development of your talent. Identify those passionate guy, competent guy, hunt them and groom them to take you to the next level who can think wild and there are no rules for them. I tried to look at how the trajectory of the drone will happen, looking at AI and robotics, lots of energy in the chat GPT and various other AI, and I could manage over 2 days period training. This is the way it will happen. Human versus human, 2001 change. So drones were used to target Taliban, and thereafter, right now, human was in the loop, now transiting to human to on the loop. And eventually, as we move forward, you will have bots versus bots, especially when you migrate to AGI and singularity. This is the rough time frame. Okay, so some kind of a roadmap, how the development will happen. I'll leave this with CENJOWS, it can be shared. Also, where does the AI and the percentage-wide robotics you stand? Where is the AI taking lead? Both of them can complement each other and thereafter nurture each other to take you to the next level. Some of the technology which forecasting for next 15 to 20 years, what we need to invest is written in the blue, and some kind of a little timeline, how it will happen. 5 years block kind of a thing has been divided. So you all can have a look at some of the technology. I'll just, okay. While we are developing that, backward compatibility and hybridization will have to keep. Organization has to be adaptive to absorb that. Cyber security and resilience has to be thought of, and training and the doctrine has to be evolved accordingly. And to achieve this, there has to be academia, industry, and user collaboration. Some kind of a proposed inventory, a mix of everything you need to have so that you have layered once the deployment pattern. And I tried to put down what the Ukraine had, what kind of a number for just an infantry for if we have around 7,000 platoons with the Indian Army, then kind of each of those platoons having one ISR drone, a smaller one. Thereafter, 25,000 would be the one which can kill the guys. Essentially, each platoon having 3 of them, maybe Ghatak having 4, and those kind of a number could be evolved. And similarly, those numbers have been put down. And this kind of a little strategy quickly we build up and make it available to industry. Because if China says we are buying 10,000 drone and put it in the media, what harm it takes us to tell the industry and tell the Chinese itself that we are not far behind. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, especially distinguished members of the uniformed services. And thank you for your time and attention as we spend the day discussing some critical aspects of what I like to call the postmodern battlefield. It gives me great pleasure in spending some time unpacking the concepts of disaggregated mass and distributed ISR, particularly in the context of a networked or transparent battlefield. As our keynote speaker, Chief of the Defense Staff, General Chauhan, explained earlier this morning, these are concepts that are relatively new from a doctrinal perspective, evolving, as always, due to the convergence of multiple technological trends and the realities of innovation on the battlefield. My apologies to you all for wasting a slide and a minute on myself, so please consider this more by way of introduction than self-aggrandizement. While you read what's on the slide, if I may just add, what we're witnessing on the battlefield since at least 2021 with the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan is wholly new, and all of us perhaps need to throw away a lot of our learned assumptions of the past half century of so-called modern warfare. And in that sense, I am no different. Perhaps at a personal level, I will offer only this. For too long have we been vulnerable to state and non-state actors, and for too long have we played catch-up with the latest technological trends on the battlefield. I will focus during this talk at the high end of military technology, where there has been a powerful revolution. A decade and a half ago, again as mentioned earlier this morning, only the United States deployed platforms like the MQ-1 Reaper, the MQ-1 Predator and the MQ-9 Reaper. But by the time of the last 5 years, platforms like the Bayraktar system of unmanned vehicles and a number of other platforms have appeared. These platforms have in turn led to the creation of wholly new doctrines, now accessible for the first time in history by a number of nations all over the world, including India. The experience in Ukraine in particular has been instructive as to the importance of flexibility on a fluid battlefield, the importance of resilience in multi-year, high-intensity conflicts, and networkization. The availability overall of relatively inexpensive, yet very sophisticated UAVs has meant force structures and doctrines aim, for the first time, for 24/7 continuous ISR coverage, as opposed to the selective and limited deployment of high-value ISR assets like a fixed-wing AWACS aircraft or an MQ-9 Reaper. This is what we call distributed ISR. The core idea is the power of hundreds of ISR sensor platforms in the air and the coverage that that fleet provides over a smaller number of relatively expensive platforms. Such uncrewed platforms would be ineffective, of course, in the absence of AI and software-assisted autonomous flight, detection, identification, transmission, and strike. The speed, accuracy, and reliability of the sensor-to-shooter linkage has become the priority on this new, networked, transparent battlefield. It therefore gives me some pride in introducing to this audience merely one example of a cutting-edge UAS, a long-range, long-endurance ISR targeting and strike platform called the MQ-35 Alpha VBAT. let it be stated that this is merely one in a number of incredible platforms that I'm sure are being developed both in India and globally. Uniquely, this 75 kilogram, 10-foot fuselage and 12.5-foot wingspan fixed-wing bird operates entirely independently of runways in vertical takeoff and landing configuration. Minimizing the infrastructure footprint necessary to support operations, VBAT can take off from any 15-foot by 15-foot open space, whether that is a forest clearing, an alley between buildings in an urban environment, a roof, or indeed a moving ship. VBAT is designed to be expeditionary as well as static. It can operate from central nodes for entire squadrons, to fly collaboratively, and can operate in an expeditionary role as it can be transported in a pickup truck by a two-man crew right to the front line for distributed presence at battalion level, at company level, at platoon level. Moreover, it takes no more than 30 minutes for a trained two-man crew to launch and recover VBAT and prepare it for transportation. And most importantly, apart from the availability of the widest range of sensors and payloads, a ceiling altitude of 18,000 foot, the key requirement now is resilience to electronic warfare. And fortunately, VBAT has established itself in the battlefields of Ukraine as being capable of resisting the most advanced forms of GPS jamming, spoofing, and GNSS denied environments. At a high level, some features of the VBAT that impinge on the doctrinal development of a distributed ISR asset: a ceiling altitude of 18,000 foot, operational range and endurance of over 12.5 hours and 200 nautical miles, fully autonomous capabilities, resilience to electronic warfare, runway independence, and most critically, from the perspective of the Indian warfighter, a cost structure that makes it possible for India to deploy disaggregated mass, whether that's at the level of the capital acquisition cost of such a platform or the eventual operating lifecycle cost of the platform. Let us now consider VBAT in 4 different scenarios within the Indian context. Consider the case of cross-border infiltration, which I'll cover in a little bit more detail, along the IB, the LC, the LAC, or indeed the eastern frontiers of Bangladesh and Myanmar, and the impact of a distributed fleet of VBATs acting as a multi-sensor platform to provide a rich, detailed, and interactive dynamic picture of the border region from a safe distance and altitude in order to deter, detect, and target infiltrators. Consider the same overall mission in the maritime domain, where VBAT's VTOL capabilities and heavy fuel engine make it ideal for shipborne and runway-independent island operations. In fact, providing integral ISR coverage for every surface combatant and Coast Guard ship in the Indian fleet is a reality that now is accessible to the Indian Armed Forces. Next, consider that VBAT is capable of fully autonomous, collaborative hunter-killer behavior as a team of 2+ birds. Imagine a number of specializations: VBATs carrying EOIR and SAR payloads, VBATs carrying comment and SIGINT payloads, VBATs carrying a laser rangefinder or an LD, and VBATs carrying a precision munition like the Hatchet missile. A team of such VBATs could operate autonomously in border areas or sensitive zones and provide the complete suite of capabilities to collect intelligence as well as conduct F2T2 operations: find, fix, track, and target. Lastly, as I've said already, consider the importance of operations within GNSS denied environments and EW jamming spoofing methods, and the proven ability of certain aircraft to be able to operate in degraded, denied, intermittent, or low bandwidth areas. The key insight there is any platform that is not capable of being resilient to electronic warfare is likely to be useless the moment the shooting starts. Focusing now for a moment on the maritime domain. Maritime domain awareness is a key part of the Indian Navy's mission to support freedom of navigation missions, search and rescue, anti-piracy, anti-drug interdiction missions, as well as the continuous threat deterrence to adversary power operations in the Indian Ocean region. Having a shipborne integral UAS capable of providing continuous extended reach operations for Indian Navy assets in the Indian Ocean region is a critical mission that birds like this are capable of. But critically, imagine the ease of training, cross-deployment, maintenance, repair, and spare parts supply chain, as well as interoperability between the tri-services if the same distributed ISR asset was suitable for jungle, desert, maritime, and mountain environments. in a straightforward application of this doctrine, imagine a fleet of MQ-35 Alpha VBAT, forward deployed at RR unit headquarters or in various parts of the counterinsurgency grid in Jammu and Kashmir, with the concept of operations being a continuous, autonomous, multi-sensor ISR sortie of the key zones and routes of infiltration, as well as direct overwatch ISR support for counterinsurgency operators while they are being conducted by the RR or Army units on the ground. In an ideal concept of operations, infiltrations must receive a 100% rate of detection, identification, and rapid tracking, fixing, and data transmission for either a kinetic strike or the deployment of ground troops, with live full mission video available to minimize Indian casualties and maximize our lethality. All of the foregoing was meant to drive home the 4 key requirements of the mainstay of a UAV or UAS fleet in today's technological context. Critically, again from an Indian perspective, the fleet has to be affordable. What we're seeing in Ukraine and in other battlefields is low numbers of exquisite, expensive platforms like MQ-9 Reaper that I'm very glad that we've managed to induct merely won't cut it in a high-intensity conflict. Instead, the disaggregated mass made available by hundreds or even thousands of relatively inexpensive platforms is really what provides flexibility and resilience to your force structure. It must be resilient, therefore, to kinetic action in the face of lethal anti-air systems by merely becoming disaggregated and distributed. It must be resilient to electronic warfare and area denial strategies through the deployment of deep technology. And most critically, one must be fully networked with an array of other systems, artillery units, missile units, special forces unit commanders, headquarters, or even other manned air assets in theater in order to maximize the effectiveness of your sensor platforms. Finally, to take a step back to the national picture, our vision at JSW Shield AI is to deploy in support of the urgent needs of the Indian warfighter a distributed ISR fleet that maximizes sensor density, the lethality of our sensor-to-shooter linkage, and the resilience/flexibility of our force structures. The implications of such platforms on Indian national security challenges can hardly be overstated. For example, beyond the land-based and maritime ISR role, the impact of an affordable, advanced ISR platform on the internal security challenges related to left-wing extremism, and I was glad to hear that Central Armed Police Forces are in the audience today as well, can also be significant in the context of jungle operations. Finally, and from my perspective, the source of the greatest pride, may I have the pleasure of informing this House that VBAT has officially landed in India. Not only have we received a comprehensive transfer of technology for the entire VBAT production line and supply chain for indigenization from the Americans, we are slated to be exporting these birds to partner nations globally. I hope that this has been an interesting and thought-provoking discussion. Many thanks to the distinguished guests in the audience for their time and attention. Thank you.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful for the opportunity, sir. At the outset, I'd like to mention that considering what all has been spoken by the previous speakers, I will not touch upon that part in my talk. So you may find the talk a bit abrupt at places, but that will give us that much of additional time. As most of us are aware, last couple of years have witnessed unfolding of a new form of warfare, and some of us actually call it game of drones. Unmanned aerial systems have forever altered the dynamics of military operations, offering unique tactical advantages and enhanced operational efficiency in various combat operations. With their rapid proliferation and ease of deployment, these systems have become indispensable in all forms of military operations. It has already been highlighted by the previous speakers that it has been used, or the technology has been used rampantly in recent conflicts, Armenia, Azerbaijan, by Iran against Aramco in Saudi Arabia, Ukraine-Russia war. In addition, they have also been found using significantly in gray zone warfare, killing of Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri by a switchblade system and IRGC chairperson Qasem Soleimani by an MQ-9 Reaper being the prime examples. It is evident that drone warfare has covered the full spectrum, that is below the threshold to a full-scale war. An analysis of the ongoing wars and grey zone scenarios has exhibited significant lessons. Some of them have already been touched upon. To begin with, the drone warfare has become less about technological sophistication and more about the ability to deploy high-volume, low-cost technology. This, along with the need for multi-spectrum and layer combinations of both kinetic and non-kinetic countermeasures, have become the prerequisite to achieve effective combat parity. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand that warfare has witnessed revolution, which has highlighted adequately by the chairperson today. Over the last few years, drone warfare has displayed that while their employment may not guarantee immediate territorial gains, it could significantly influence the ideological and political alignment of an adversary at a much lower cost and a fast pace. Hence the lesson that tactical edge may be with the weaker side, provided it deploys sufficient drones, volumes, and technologies. First-person view, that is FPV and swarm drones, are a recent addition to the military arsenal. Given their high speed, small sizes, and capability to beat radars and jammers, they are emerging as tactical game changers and force multipliers. It is no surprise, therefore, that all our adversaries, both China and Pakistan, are investing heavily into drones while making concerted efforts to weave them into their war-fighting doctrines, and hence it is logical to deduce that there is an urgent need to induct state-of-the-art drone systems in Indian Armed Forces too. In the Indian paradigm, we are presented with a challenging environment with vast land borders and extended coastlines. India faces a complex array of security threats along these. With recent political developments in Maldives and Bangladesh, we are in a situation where India doesn't enjoy the best of the relations with a large number of its neighbors. In the recent past, we have witnessed employment of drones along Punjab border and in Manipur too, for arms drops, drug supply, and targeting of security forces. In view of these live threats, deterring our adversaries from misadventure along our borders requires a 24/7 surveillance system using full spectrum technology by the three services. Besides conventional operations, we also undertake sub-conventional operations and counter-terrorism operation within our borders, for which a separate set of training skills and specialist equipment is needed in large numbers. While the global markets are a chock-a-block with all types of drones and technologies, we have a clear vision of our requirements at tactical, operational, and strategic levels. Our requirement extends from nano drones of 2-kilometer range to hail-class platforms up to 10,000 kilometers. Given the ever-rising threats from our adversaries, we are also actively looking to acquire potent counter-UAS systems for various configurations ranging from man-portable to vehicle-mounted ones, for which iterations are planned in the coming sessions today and tomorrow. From the classification perspective, CDS elaborated a lot in detail. However, as far as we are concerned, battlefield transparency, ISR, targeting, and special tasks are some of the requirements from these drones. Battlefield transparency and ISR is the need at different levels from section upwards and at different ranges from 2,000 to 5,000 kilometers. Targeting, that is precision targeting, employing FPV drones, swarm, and loiter munition system is second key function. Category-wise, our short-range requirement is for drones in various categories, that is mini, micro, and nano at the designated ranges and altitudes. Besides these, the RT needs tactical RPAs with envelope of 100 kilometer and altitude up to 25,000 feet. Beyond this, mail and hail class RPAs with extended ranges of 5,000 kilometers and 10,000 kilometers would be needed by the Indian Armed Forces. Ladies and gentlemen, broadly, the services have a clear understanding of their requirements, which underscores the strategic importance that is attached to employment of drones in modern combat operations. To amplify this, I seek your attention. Sorry, the slide isn't there. At the global level, before discussing the technological trends, I wish to dilate upon an interesting discourse which used to be actively debated in all military forums with respect to viability of drones replacing conventional platforms like aircraft, artillery, and tanks. The huge proliferation of military drones in the current military milieu has now vindicated their relevance as a potent force multiplier to classic warfighting equipment. The current technological capabilities of global military RPAs and drones are quite advanced and continue to evolve. Design-wise, the need for lightweight and foldable prototype remains very important. Carbon fiber reinforced polymers for airframes and Kevlar composites for making strong and light propellers are some global trends. Endurance is the next parameter wherein there remains a perpetual hunger for extended flight and loiter times. Solar-powered and hybrid power sources appear to be the solution in this regard. In the intense EW environment, as manifested on modern battlefields, stealth and electromagnetic resistance remains a key priority. Besides radar absorbent materials like graphene and carbon fibers, which are used for EM absorptions, design changes like repositioning the engines and exhausts are being tried. Machine vision, while the environment is generally aware of the AI and the need to incorporate it for enhancing decision speeds and improving target identification, Anduril Industries' Bolt-M drone is designed for machine vision by using computer vision and AI to interact better with the environment and deliver faster response times. Multi-domain integration is fast becoming an imperative on the battlefield. When operating military drones, merely receiving the feeds would not suffice. The need to integrate these feeds with automated tactical management systems which could decipher the targets, allocate them, and control their degradation by fire units will remain very, very essential and critical. As users, this is one technology which we strongly urge our development partners to explore. The Kropva battle management system of Ukraine is a contemporary example in this regard and must be studied. To conclude, it is felt that while the domestic drone industry is expanding and evolving at a rapid pace, there remains an urgent need for accelerated innovation in sync with global trends to match and outmatch the adversary's capabilities. In the final segment, I wish to talk about the challenges faced from the procurement end. I have classified them into technological, operational, policy-related issues. Talk about the technological issues first. Dependence on foreign technology is a reality even today. When discussed in sync with achieving bare minimum IC percentages on the back of non-critical technologies, the issue achieves significant proportions. The gathering here would agree that even 5 years after promulgation of Atmanirbhar vision, we remain dependent on imported foreign technologies to a very large extent. The issue of Chinese part is a subject of national discussion and is understood by all present here. I will take your memory back to the recent sequence of walkie-talkie explosions in Lebanon to highlight the danger of relying on foreign-made components in critical systems and components. Limited production capability is another important issue which remains a concern. The Indian military's requirement, especially of smaller drones, is quite large. However, it has been our experience that in recent procurements, deliveries have been delayed inordinately. Not only does a situation like this affect the national security, it also delays field exploitation by the user, which in turn prevents future orders from being placed, a typical chicken or egg paradox. The Indian drone industry appears to be and is to a very large extent divided into two distinct segments. The first one being small drone segment dominated by the private sector, and the second one, that is the larger drone segment dominated by public sector and big industrial partners. While the private sector has and is attempting to make significant progress in small drones category, the speed or the issue of the larger drones could be expedited. In the operational domain, lack of skilled operators for training, repairing, and sustaining the field army's requirement remains a criticality, and a lot needs to be done in this regard. In the domain of government policy and regulatory framework also, we feel that there exists a scope for improvement. While the domestic drone industry is finding their feet, Indian aviation standards, certification, and QA bodies are accustomed to following global standards and prototype, leading to mismatch at a lot of time and places. Lastly, we feel that as of now, policy on civil and military drone tend to overlap. There remains a requirement to clearly demarcate these and allow waivers to military drone manufacturing, especially for high-end systems like beyond visual and electric line of sight systems. In the final reckoning of the above, contribute towards widening the capability gap with our adversaries. I would be failing in my duties, ladies and gentlemen, if at this stage I do not highlight the buyer's dilemma too. Drone technology is evolving at a very fast pace. The services have a large requirement also. However, placing large orders for full requirement is fraught with the consequence of acquiring inventories or the acquired inventories becoming obsolete very, very fast. Hence the imperative to buy incrementally in smaller quantities, which forces us to train on and maintain multiple inventories. Against this backdrop, we request the industry to innovate faster and keep us ahead of our adversaries on the development curve. To the industry, we recommend more investment in R&D, deeper and more cross-collaborative JVs, whether with the foreign or local companies within India. Upskilling of workers and more integration with DPSUs. We also propose creation of a framework like the American Blue UAS list, which provides the services with a wide variety of security compliant, interoperable and easy to procure systems. For ourselves, that is for the services, we feel that development of joint inter-services doctrines for futuristic employment in multi-domain operations need to be shaped and prepared at the earliest. And lastly, we also need to invest in development of testing infrastructure and ranges. I have highlighted the Indian requirements, which you all would agree remain significantly large. Our adversaries, especially China, continue to develop their capabilities at an alarming pace. Not only do we need to move ahead qualitatively, we also need to increase the numbers with the range and scale of their domestic ecosystem being much larger than ours. I've also highlighted the need for urgent focus on homegrown technologies that could replace foreign parts, assuring users of higher security and also of the commitment to keep the forces supplied through surge production over extended conflicts. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind.
May now request Brigadier Narang to tell us about what is happening in the world today as he covers what's happening in various conflicts around the globe.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to be here and cover some issues on the campaign strategies, what has been followed in the recent conflicts and lessons for us. Basically, what's happened is in all these campaigns, we need to have one central theme. And the Ukrainians and the Russians, mainly the Russians, realized it a bit late. And as the DG Infantry just brought out, quantity has a quality of its own. That's what we need to realize. With the Chinese quantities which they are looking at, we also need to look at a great amount of quantity. Maybe the quantity may not be there, but indigenous is most important. Next issue, combat surge. The capacity to mass produce is extremely important. You may have the issue, you may just select a L1, L2 and others, but to put together the national capacities to mass produce when required is extremely critical. So with these three key lessons, I'll come first to Iran-Israel, then Russia-Ukraine, and of course, not touch upon it, but we can't forget that our neighbor on the west, Pakistan, has fought with Iran as well as Afghanistan with these kind of missile drone strikes happening on and off. what the Israeli conflict has shown us between Iran and Israel, that the escalation ladder in the gray zone is being taken by these missile drone strikes. And you really don't know when does the cycle stop. They're not neighbors. They're far away from each other. But still those escalation strikes, and you know the dates, I put it here, how they are going ahead. Now, when the Israelis struck Damascus, the Iranian consulate in Syria, they thought their air defense was impenetrable, the best in the world. 6 nations together, the cost we are well aware of. And then the Iranians decided to strike on 13th April. And first time in a manner using every domain. It was actually cross-domain. You're using cyber, you're using every layer. And in those layers, they calculated that what is going to penetrate, which kind of a layer which is going to get involved. Cruise, ballistic missiles, drones together. How could they do it? I mean, 1st April when they were stuck, 13th April they responded, 12 days. And they were declaring to the whole world they're going to be doing it. They had an existing wide array of missiles available with them. The ranges were available with them. So that's a point which we need to keep in mind. Second, they did not use the best ones the first time. They were prepared to go up the escalation ladder next time. So they tried a different variety, use obsolete decoys. And finally, to penetrate that so-called impenetrable AD system, they worked out on each detail's trajectory planning. And finally, we are aware what happened. So on 13th April, they could just get 5 or 6 out of 300 plus. But see, on the next time, on 1st October, they managed to get much more. Sure enough, the Israelis struck them hard this time, and Israelis understood what's the theme. First time they wasted. Second time they were clear that all the AD sites have to be taken. Their theme was clear this time. And we really are not sure when will this stop. But keep this issue in mind if such a case repeats with our northern frontier. The Chinese are trying to build a similar wall. And just day before, most of the time it happens intentionally. You see on Weibo, Chinese Weibo, some of those HQ-29, HQ-26 vehicles, two odd launchers, interceptors seen, intentionally showing that they have the capacity to block such things. So they've got that complete ladder up, trying to replicate what the Israelis are. Key takeaway, we really don't know when will the cycle of strikes stop. IW victory. In the IW domain, that M3 theory, mass, military, media. At a time, military needed the media to reach the masses. Today, masses itself are conveying the message of the military. In that domain, whosoever strikes the IW first is very important. "100% AD proof, it's impossible. And it's going to be very, very costly to get onto that stage. But it doesn't mean you can let the lives of your soldiers go off like this. So there has to be a balanced air defense, integrated air, missile, drones defense. Exploitation of drones and decoys, and that's where I get to the point of quantity. You do not have to have the best of the quality of drones. Send something in air so that the ones which are better are able to infiltrate and penetrate and go deeper. Indigenized production, it is deterrence. No country, how are the Pakistanis repeatedly striking Afghanistan? Because they know there's no such indigenous production. I leave it at that. Now next, of course, you can then, with this indigenous production, you can also exploit the proxies like very effectively. The Iranians are using the Houthis to do it, both in missiles and drones and anti-air defense too. Moving on to the second part, the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, it was not just about small drones. There are large strikes also, long-range strikes also which are happening, so we can't forget. But primarily you see Russia, which was a major global producer of weapons, it started off primarily with missiles and didn't have the long-range drones. And somewhere in October 22, it started shifting. And if you see the latest one, this is where they are. The number of missiles are lesser, the number of long-range drones are more. For what? To facilitate those missiles to penetrate much deeper. And if you see this last month, right up till 7th March, the quantum of Shaheeds has only increased. And it's not just one. And as someone pointed out, I mean, in fact, AVM Rajiva Ranjan pointed out, Bakhtiyars were there till a particular time. And it's thereafter the Shaheeds which have taken off. So you have to have a variety of drones to ensure that your missiles can penetrate. This is what it is. And even in the missiles, the Russians had to come up with innovations because as the air defense was getting strengthened. So the type of warheads, multiple warheads, everything had to advance during these 3 years. Interesting connotation for all those who understand what a BrahMos missile is and what its equivalent faced in the war. Now, while the Pakistanis may be limited to the X-band, the Chinese are surely not. So we have to be aware of what bands, Charlie, X-ray and others, and what we need to avoid. Important thing, the kind of pressure has forced Ukraine to also develop missiles. And where they were hardly existing, they have modified, developed indigenous and gone ahead. Cost factor. When you have a 3 years long war, you can't forget costs. And that is where those highly costly missiles, the Russians have replaced with the low-cost drones and mass producing it, exploiting the mass production factories inside. And that's how you see, I mean, 2022, the blue line, and 2024, the green line, how things have changed. Dummies and decoys are galore. And within that, if you see right up till 5th March, whether Trump is supporting, Elon Musk is supporting or not, Russians are clear where they are to exploit, and their complete focus has been exploiting the low-cost saturation of enemy air defense to target the Ukrainians' power sector. The Ukrainian AD, despite all that, peaked in January, but still could not take on the quantum of drones being produced by Russia. Next, of course, is the tactical level. The tactical level battle space geometry has got changed with the establishment of tactical reconnaissance strike complexes. Yes, the Russians have not used the swarm format. Both the Russians and Ukrainians have used the stack format of drones because in places that it becomes more advantageous, and that is significantly seen here. So what are the lessons we incorporate? A hybrid mix of missiles, a mix of drones, both stacks, swarm, one-way, short-range, decoys, and rockets which are modular, can fire rockets and missiles both. Strategic lessons first. Missile strikes have changed the way of death threats. They move towards coercion and compellence. Some places it has failed, some places it has succeeded. Now, Iran-Israel, we really do not know what is Iran going to do next. If Israel succeeded with the last strike, we'll say it has compelled Iran to stop. But we do not know. I mean, it's a long gap now. In case of China-Taiwan, China struck on 4th August 22. Taiwan has still continued with the way it is, not succeeded. But this is what official steps of Science of Military Strategy 2020 of Chinese show of what they need to do. And the last 8 steps they have not done against us, but they've done against Taiwan. Next, if someone strikes you, you need to have a mirroring response, which means, yes, you may go cross-domain, but may not go over the escalation ladder. Do you provoke? Are you able to penetrate? What will be the barrage and a hybrid mixed array? Combat readiness. Difference between short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles. While drones, you may prefer short-range. In missiles, within those time frames, you need to keep in mind, time is short, I'll not emphasize this part. Then, of course, the wide array. We are aware what Pakistan has and what China has. What do we have the array to respond to such a hybrid array which exists both on our west and northern front? If the first strike takes place, are our assets survivable? How do we ensure their survivability to be able to take the second strike? It's not nuclear, it's conventional domain second strike capability to secure your assets and be able to strike. We are well aware these are the officially declared Chinese concepts for their rocket force. You see, the surface-to-surface missile bases, LRVs, the firepower systems for the artillery, for the PLA force, the AD. So these are the first, prioritized list of targets. Within this, if and when a strike has to take place, the central theme has to be there. For Israelis, finally it came off as the Iranian AD systems. For the Russians, after 3 years, it's come out clearly as the Ukrainian power grid. And that's when the power grid has started disrupting, when Zelensky is actually getting critically affected. Targeting, AI accuracy, AI enablement, the surge capacity I've already talked about, the component modularity between cruise and ballistic missiles, the scales, the replenishment scales are just certain amount of missiles going to be enough to such a last war, and of course the multi-purpose pod launchers. You see the Chinese PCL-191, capable of firing missiles and ballistic missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, as well as the rockets. Something like a HIMARS fighting the ATAC-MS. Surely, if we combine Pinaka and Pralay, you'll understand what a versatile product it can be. Communication. Electromagnetic spectrum has to be managed extremely well. And it's not just the electromagnetic spectrum, you need to have a wide array of communication right up till quantum, what Chinese are planning for. And yes, of course, strategically, the air defense. This is a recent American study post-Trump that how they need to do what all layers, and one layer may not succeed. So they have come up with 3 layers, and this is all what they are making it part of their multi-domain task forces which they are establishing. We have to be careful that these drone or the defense systems are not far away. The Chinese have their own, the Turkish have produced their own. So that is double collusivity. Pakistan being collusive with Turkey, Pakistan being collusive with China, and 3 front. Turkey is also providing to Bangladesh. China is also providing to Bangladesh. So we must be aware of this. Operational, yes, we have advanced from those sub-domain kill chains to multi-domain kill webs, smart targeting, cost-effective targeting. You need to match your weapons and targets absolutely well to be able to come up with the right product. Multi-domain battle space, it's not just the airspace which needs to be managed. It is also for the drones, the electromagnetic spectrum which needs to be clearly managed to fly such a wide variety. Precision warfare, target acquisition accuracies, overcoming our procedural bureaucracies to get the targeting procedure correct. And we all sitting here, we must understand collaboration is survival. If your military industry and the military do not combine, the Ukrainians have shown it that that is only how the innovation will occur. Comprehensive grid to counter drones, this will get discussed later, so I'm not emphasizing, but yes, we have moved from a wide array of assets and we need to have them. Tactical lessons, hit mobile targets, have these requisite organization structures. Camouflage, it's not just the cope cages, we have moved to, you see what the Russians are doing for mobile targets, for their convoys to move, the complete roads are covered with the camo nets, these are nets. The Ukrainians have come up with integrated low-cost mesh. Heterogeneous type of payloads. If you talk of FPVs, you had a bomber being displayed outside in the exhibition. You have to have multiple type of payloads which you can deliver. We talked about pager attacks. The Ukrainians have gone about and done FPV goggle attacks. So that's what cyber. Within the cyber domain, there are 3 things which are critical and which you need to be aware of. One of the drone producers outside has got that exact solution to ensure we are integrally strengthened in the cyber domain, which are 3 critical components in any drones. So that's Zupa, which is down below, providing that solution to you. Ukrainians are now coming up with the drone line project. 15 kilometers of front line just covered with drones to surveillance. So these are the essentials. Time is short, what we need to integrate, and there are solutions which can be discussed in the question answer session of how Chinese are not 10 feet tall and they can be handled. I leave it with this. There are various components which we need to take care of and we can have a suitable response. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the four speakers give us a variety of insights, starting from everything in terms of what requirements we could have for drones in the future, where the battlefield could take us, what we could learn from ongoing conflicts around the globe, and then, of course, some amount of a little insight into what the industry could offer in terms of such capabilities. I'm sure Brigadier Narang left us with lots of rather thought-provoking, let's say, questions to be answered. And while he did try and situationalize what's happening elsewhere across the globe into what could happen in our part of the world, it becomes then rather important for us to weave it all together into how such capabilities are manageable. They exist. They are proliferating at great pace. And unless we get onto that bandwagon in a quick manner, we could very well be finding ourselves play catch with rather interesting outcomes. So if that be the case, and I was to try and put some of this together in some kind of a quick fashion without taking too much of time and leaving some opportunity for some Q&A, I have about some 7 to 8 issues that I'd like to briefly touch upon as we go on. The first, of course, is that it is becoming increasingly clear that every force wants an air force. This domain of air is much what is the choice of modern conflict. Currently, as is seen in every conflict that got talked about, it becomes also the domain of choice, the domain of first response, or in fact the domain of first use. To take away from there, the future possibly then, as many people have already said so, and as Marshal Ranjan also did point out that the future does lie possibly in the unmanned, simply because of the efficiency, both in terms of cost and capability, that unmanned systems provide. They're cheaper to manufacture. They don't require so much of critical technologies to go behind in the background to save that individual that otherwise would occupy that airframe typically. And that provides opportunity for greater payload, longer range, more maneuverability, and everything that goes along. And so possibly it gives in for capabilities that a manned aircraft may find difficult to replicate. It provides great efficiency. Efficiency in terms of the moment you reduce the cost of manufacture, it enables proliferation. New technologies that are coming alongside in both the computing domain as well as in terms of AI and ML allow you even more and more local capability on board these UAS. When you put all that together, then the possibility of drone rain, as was brought out by one speaker, is a distinct possibility not too far into the future. To take away from that then, and this cat and mouse game of both having such systems and countering such systems becomes equally important. That balance continues to tilt one way or the other. At the moment, however, it would appear that that balance is heavily tilted towards the systems themselves. Because when it comes to cost and complexity, trying to shoot down a $10,000 device with a $100,000 weapon is a no-brainer. So if that be the case, then what remains for us in this audience is to look at where we stand, what we need to do, and how we need to progress hereforth to ensure that we don't get left behind. And ideally, from simply not being left behind, how we can possibly take leadership stage or leadership positions on this stage. One will have to look at a wide variety of matters then. The first is, of course, Make in India. And being Atmanirbhar about it is not simply about having a buzzword. It talks about, or it should talk about, actually matching it from simply being aggregators of differently sourced foreign components to actually putting it all together after making it here. Because in many of such capabilities that are built across the globe, one really does not know what lurks in the background, whether it is in terms of firmware with zero-day exploits that could be targeted or utilized by somebody else, whether it is about technology that leaves that little backdoor for somebody to exploit or to prevent you from using correctly when the day of reckoning comes, or simply in terms of something that could be predicted or programmed to fail on the day when you need it, especially since technology here is developing at such a rapid pace. Which means then that Make in India is critical, and Make it all in India is almost as much critical. Surprisingly and thankfully, some of these technologies or some of the components that go into these technologies are available in no small measure within country even today. It then remains upon us to actually being able to harness that inside country, put it together, and build on capabilities from there on. None of them actually, sorry to use a cliche, but really rely on rocket science. It is aerospace science, it is not really rocket science. And at some stage, while the limitations of physics, the limitations of the electromagnetic spectrum, the limitations of available EM space would become relevant, the availability of geography in terms of vast expanse, in terms of diverse regions from where these could be operated from, can therefore actually still be exploited. There are some benefits that we have that we must learn to harness and utilize for our own capabilities and building such capabilities. Which brings me to legislation and similar frameworks, both in terms of the ability to produce such equipment, the permissions to utilize such equipment without actually being detrimental to either law and order or national security, the ability to now rely on quicker procurement practices to ensure that by the time that last man standing manages to get hold of some usable technology, it has not already become obsolete. And so manage both the quantities that we need, manage the obsolescence, and yet have capabilities that we require, keeping alongside whatever cutting-edge technology is available both internally, in India, and possibly across the world. So when you look at all that, some of those practices will have to change. If you look at a 3 to 4 year timeline before something that you want today can actually be fielded on the front, by then it's probably already dead. At the same time, as was brought out by General Ajay, if you build up a large inventory today, you deny yourself the ability to spend money gainfully into getting something newer that you need tomorrow. Because no matter what you say, nobody has that, has absolutely the finance required to get whatever you may wish for. So if all this has to be put together in a manageable mechanism, then we need to look at homegrown production, appropriate procurement practices, timely deliveries, and the ability to be able to upgrade to prevent obsolescence, which means anything that industry makes today should also in its own way be somewhat backward compatible, so that you don't continuously have to change both the equipment itself as well as the background infrastructure that you require and the training requirements that would come alongside in order to ensure that you can actually utilize the capabilities that are being fielded. Because finally, until we actually get to that chimera where everything will be run by AI, and there'll be some supercomputer somewhere that will be actually fighting the war for you, one will require that human in the loop, because no matter what, finally human ingenuity is something that, at least as far as today's time and date, we haven't been able to match or manage. So if that be the case, then you finally have to rely on that human who's finally going to utilize that particular asset and utilize it to best capability. Even in programming the AI algorithm that may be utilized, or programming the algorithm that programs the algorithm. But if that be the case, some of these issues are what this particular gathering in their own individual rights would be able to, or should be able to look at and provide us with some answers, so that overall we build towards national capability and we build towards national security. I think we have about 5 minutes of time, and maybe we could take 1 or 2 questions to any of the speakers, something that somebody was desperate to ask and didn't know whom to ask.
Good morning, sir. I am Santosh Chaudhary, Scientist B from Defense Institute of Psychological Research. And my question is for you, sir. As you have highlighted in your last lines about the importance of the human element who will be, leading, managing all these machines. These are all technologically intensive machines, sir, whether it is unmanned aerial system, unmanned aircraft system, or counter-UAS system. So, sir, these are cognitively demanding specialized roles. Operating a unmanned combat system at any magnitude, whether at the level of a MQ-9 Predator or a micro-air vehicle, that would be requiring a lot of spatial visualization, lot of cognitive skills, psychomotor coordination at the minor level, and also his decision-making skills, his information processing, everything will come into play. So, sir, in elsewhere, abroad, in all other countries, there are screening mechanisms in place where prior to the training, before you select someone to train in these kind of specialized roles, they are screened particularly to see whether the right kind of personnel are, selected for undergoing this kind of training. So with respect to this, sir, would you feel that today, if not today, primarily in couple of years, it would be primarily dominating by the manned and unmanned systems. And as you said, possibly in future, the unmanned systems would play a more prominent role than the manned platforms. So would you feel, sir, it is pertinent that today we embark on, in customizing or preparing a selection mechanism to identify these kind of right personnel? Because unless the human element what we are selecting for undergoing the training in which we'll be investing that couple of months or 6 months time to train them and give them that kind of skills and competencies and whatever is required for these roles, is it pertinent, sir, to think in this direction when we are, planning about different ecosystems? And does this requirement arise?
After that rather long question, I think I have a simple answer. I'll say yes.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of sum it up with that. But allow me just 2-3 sentences on where, yes, the requirement, of course, exists. But if, and I'm certain a large number of everybody listening in this audience would have children at home. What you and I, okay, definitely I, may not be so much you, would have found difficult to do with a mobile phone in hand.
Yes, sir.
Till 2 days past. Hand over that same mobile phone to a 3-year-old, and he'd probably be able to go through the number lock, open it to play the game of his choice, probably go onto the net and see something that he or she wants to. That's the lovely part about human development. I think it goes better than Moore's law, which I referred to some time ago. Which means then that I don't believe that both in terms of development, design and development, the shaping of a UI and UX as may be required in due course, would not keep pace with this so as to reduce what would be the training complexity and requirement and that people would still be able to use it just as well when they equip themselves with it. Yes, of course, it would require some training, some indoctrination, some amount of exposure, but I don't really think that is going to be a challenging limitation.
Thank you, sir.
Come, sir, you have
all the examples that you gave in Ukraine and Israel.
Everything is about the precision, targeting and this thing. But precision warfare started somewhere in 80s. 91 we saw how the whole thing started. Are we seeing the end of limits of precision targeting, guidance, all that this thing now? And if so, then what next?
So it's become a bit more complicated now. At that time, you could, like what Americans did, those wars were against much, asymmetric adversaries. Today, you're fighting war and the Americans themselves are accepting with near-peer adversaries or better adversaries. So you stuck a GPS-guided bomb and it fell at the required coordinates. But today, with the PGM jamming and so many things, that precision has become all the more complex. So, more so, the AI enablement, GPS denied environments, precision is becoming a challenge. And it's a right balance which you have to maintain. As you said, in future, you have to have a balance of conventional munition which is there, which may not be guided, whereas the guided munitions have to have much more countermeasures to ensure the precision still remains. So it's a balanced mix, and precision warfare is becoming more and more important today. It's not going off. That's my take, sir.
Okay, maybe we'll take a last question simply because of the time that we are running out. Go ahead, please.
Sir, I'm from DRDO. Sir, you have talked about that the rate at which the technology is improving and the rapidness with which the system to be inducted. But when we see today, be it inducted from the industry or from DRDO technology, the kind of testing time it requires for Indian product to get inducted in the services, it quite prolonged and cumbersome. So do you think that we should have a look at the acceptance procedures a little bit simplified so that we can have new systems in a shorter time, maybe in a small numbers as well?
Yes, ma'am, you're quite on the button on that one, and you would agree with me that I spoke about different frameworks and different legislation that we'll have to probably put in order to ensure or shorten this particular cycle. Yes, it cannot possibly happen only from one side. It would happen from probably both the manufacturer as well as the operator, so as to be able to bridge this gap and make things faster. Of course, it's an essential. And towards that, one could possibly look at both. Being able to put down those requirements in that much clearer form quicker, and for industry or manufacturers to be able to meet those requirements that much quicker, and then for organizations to look at how they could be suitably certified and fielded in that much quicker time frames. Of course, without a doubt. Well, thank you everybody here on the panel and for your insightful talks, and thank you to everybody for having been such nice listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Panel 1, for these valuable insights and setting the stage for deeper discussions on the evolving role of drones in modern warfare. May I now request Air Marshal S.P. Dharkar, Vice Chief of Air Staff, to present mementos to the esteemed speakers. Lieutenant General Ajay Kumar, Air Vice Marshal Rajiva Ranjan, Mr. Surgeon Shah, Brigadier Anshuman Narang, May I now request DG CENJOWS to present a memento to the chairperson. Yes, sir. I request the dignitaries to join us for a group photograph.